Egypt reiterates its steadfast opposition to the ongoing Israeli obstruction of humanitarian aid. Israel announces approval for military plans to evacuate Gaza's population. And the Russian foreign minister says Putin is prepared to meet with Zelensky once a summit agenda is finalized. Good afternoon. Egypt's Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli has reiterated the nation's steadfast opposition to the ongoing Israeli war on Gaza and the obstruction of humanitarian aid. He emphasized Egypt's rejection of any measures aimed at displacing Palestinians or liquidating their cause. Madbouli also highlighted intensive Egyptian efforts with mediators to achieve a comprehensive ceasefire and de-escalate regional tensions to spare its people from further conflict. His remarks came during a meeting with his Japanese counterpart Shigeru Ishiba while attending the 9th Tokyo International Conference on African Development in Yokohama. During the meeting, Madbouli reviewed Egypt's ongoing efforts with other mediators to achieve a comprehensive ceasefire and support de-escalation across the Middle East. He emphasized that Egypt will continue these endeavors to reduce regional tensions and spare its people from further conflict and stress. Japan's Prime Minister has called on Israel to adhere to international law and work to improve the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. He also expressed appreciation and support for Egypt's efforts towards a ceasefire and the release of detainees. A powerful explosion, the latest in a series of strikes, was visible from Israel's border with Gaza. This blast is part of the ongoing conflict that began, of course, on October 7th, 2023. Since then, Israel's military offensive has killed at least 60,000 Palestinians. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has initiated immediate negotiations to release all detainees held in Gaza and end the nearly two-year war on Israel's terms. While the military continues its offensive on Gaza City, having called up 60,000 reservists, mediators are working to bridge gaps in a new ceasefire proposal. Israel's government insists on the release of all remaining detainees, while the proposed deal would free 10 living detainees and 18 bodies in exchange for 200 long-serving Palestinian detainees. Israel Defense Minister Israel Katz has announced approval for military plans to eliminate Hamas and evacuate Gaza's population. Katz stated that the primary conditions for ending the war are the release of all detainees and the dismantling of Hamas's weapons. He warned that if Hamas does not comply, Gaza will face the same fate as the Palestinian side of Rafah City and Beit Hanun. The Palestinian Foreign Ministry is demanding that the international community take responsibility for ending the genocide and starvation in Gaza. The ministry states that the Palestinians are facing genocide and ethnic cleansing in front of the world's global eyes. It urges that pressure on Israel to to them to immediately allow humanitarian aid into Gaza, condemning Israel for using starvation as a weapon of war. A joint UN statement from several organizations, including the FAO, UNICEF, and the WHO, has revealed that 500,000 people in Gaza are suffering from famine. The organizations voiced concern about a potential military offensive on Gaza City and its devastating impact on civilians. They urged for unhindered aid access to mitigate deaths from starvation and malnutrition. And according to Global Hunger Monitor, Gaza City and surrounding areas are officially experiencing famine, a crisis expected to spread. The Integrated Food Security Phase Classification reports that nearly a quarter of Palestinians, over 514,000 people, are now facing famine, with that number projected to rise. The IPC's findings makes Gaza the fifth territory to experience famine since the system was created. Israel, however, has dismissed the report as false and biased. The UN Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator, Tom Fletcher, has said that the famine in Gaza was preventable, citing Israel's systematic obstruction of humanitarian aid. Fletcher called on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to allow massive supplies into the region. According to a global monitor, almost a quarter of Gaza's population is facing starvation, with critically low supplies of essential nutrients and pushing more children toward famine. Now for more, let's go, of course, to Rana, who's in our newsroom. Rana.
Thank you so much, Mark. And for more analysis on the matter, Professor Hussein Addik, an expert in Israeli and American affairs, joins us from occupied Jerusalem. Welcome to Qnews, sir. Sir, how do you view Netanyahu's statements about agreeing to negotiate a ceasefire in Gaza, but only on his own terms?
A lot for you and for having me today, and thanks a lot for the invitation. Regarding the Netanyahu statement, before it, we are having that Netanyahu said that he accepted the military processes and operations to occupy Gaza Strip, and then after that he proposed the statement to have a negotiation for a ceasefire. Till now, we do not have any kind of action or real action to have a ceasefire in Gaza till next Sunday. This is a kind of differences in the speeches of Benjamin Netanyahu, because he's trying to own the time to have the people into his side and to try to have all the time to occupy Gaza Strip, and sending message to the US and the European countries and the Arab countries that Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to negotiate to have a ceasefire. But this is not the truth. The truth is that Netanyahu is trying to have the time to occupy Gaza Strip, and he is not serious at all to have a ceasefire in Gaza. And the reason behind this is that he will send the delegation to have negotiations upon his own terms, and this is a kind of facing the truth that it is impossible for him to accept the ceasefire during this period. And the most important thing we need to notice here, that he is having the authority to have the Gaza Strip and to force people to leave Gaza as soon as possible, and he's trying to so we are trying to have the time so that they can reach a ceasefire. So they are trying to release the hostages and to on the time to occupy Gaza Strip. These are the terms and that they are trying to apply, and they are trying to end the war in Gaza. But at the same time, Netanyahu is trying to end the time, and it's impossible for him to accept the ceasefire. So this is not the future for him, and this is not the future for Gaza Strip, and there is no action that will be taken to end the war in Gaza. So this is the truth regarding Benjamin Netanyahu's statement. He wants the continuation of the war in Gaza.
Does Netanyahu seek to delay a ceasefire in Gaza in order to implement his plan to occupy the Gaza Strip?
A kind of point of view, and actually 100% it might be the truth that he wants to delay the ceasefire in Gaza because he's trying to have military operations in Gaza Strip, and he is taking steps and actual steps to take the Gaza Strip to apply his own agenda. And this is a kind of possibility for us that he is trying to delay even the good negotiations to occupy the Gaza Strip, and actually he is negotiating upon his own terms, and this is a kind of pressure on the parties.
Sir, what is your comment on the United Nations official declaration of famine spreading in the Gaza Strip, yet no action is taken until now?
Definitely. This statement is a kind of so late to have a declaration for the famine in Gaza. Now it is too late, and there is no kind of action, as you said, that is taken to end the famine and the starvation in Gaza. And this shows us the truth that UN institutions and other international institutions, they are not trying to end the war in Gaza. They are not trying to help people who are suffering in Gaza Strip. So for that reason, UN or any other organization that is trying to deliver the aid, they are not having actual actions to help people who are suffering from the war.
Sir, will Israel annex parts of the West Bank in response to European countries' decisions to recognize the state of Palestine?
Yes, actually, this will happen so soon, and this is a kind of a statement on the agenda of Israeli occupation forces. They will set such a decision, and they will have other European countries that want to say that they will have the Palestinian state. And actually, the reaction of Palestinian or the Israeli occupation forces, we cannot expect the reaction, but as an option, I guess they will annex parts of the West Bank in response to the European countries' decision. And this is the plan. We have this plan since 2017, and we are trying to expect what is coming after the negotiation. So this kind of agreement, till now, we are having the statement or recognizing the state of Palestine. Until now, we are trying to having actions from the European countries to have it on reality. So we need actual action for this.
Is there any potential breakthrough in the coming days to end the war in Gaza?
From my point of view, after reading the whole scene and analyzing all the statements from Benjamin Netanyahu and from Washington and from Tel Aviv, actually, I think that it's impossible to have a negotiation to end the war in Gaza and or to have a permanent ceasefire in Gaza.
That was Professor Hussein Adik from Occupy Jerusalem, an expert in Israeli and American affairs. Thank you very much for joining us on Qnews. Now we go back to Mark in our studios. Mark?
Thank you very much, Rana El-Kassas there in our newsroom. Now, a spokesperson for the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Jeremy Lawrence, has said that famine has been officially declared in northern Gaza, asserting it is a direct result of Israeli government actions. He added that this development, which affects a quarter of the population, could constitute a war crime, as starvation is being used as a method of warfare. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that the situation must not continue with impunity. Despite these claims, the Israeli military has accused Hamas of a false starvation campaign. A global hunger monitor has reported that famine has struck northern Gaza, with nearly a quarter of its population affected by extreme food shortages. The Integrated Food Security Phase Classification System network confirms the famine, warning it could expand to other areas by the end of September. The report states that 54% of the population faces emergency levels of food insecurity. Hamas has called the famine declaration in Gaza a stain on Israel and its supporters. The group states that the crisis is conclusive evidence of a crime against over 2 million besieged Palestinians. Hamas urges an immediate response from the UN and the Security Council to halt the war, lift the blockade, and hold Israel legally accountable for using starvation as a war crime. So, as Cairo intensifies mediation efforts with Doha and Washington, aiming for a sustainable ceasefire, detainee release and Israeli withdrawal, and unhindered humanitarian aid to Gaza amid the ongoing tensions.
Cairo, alongside Doha and Washington, continues to press Hamas and Israel back to indirect talks, with Egypt and Qatar reaffirming their commitment to intensify diplomacy and overcome obstacles. Egyptian mediation is centered on a comprehensive, sustainable ceasefire tied to the release of detainees, Israeli withdrawal, and an immediate surge of humanitarian aid into Gaza. Egypt's role goes beyond shuttle diplomacy to practical action. Cairo has stressed that aid must flow without obstruction and crossings must operate at scale, underscoring Egypt's humanitarian responsibility toward the Palestinians. Mediators, Egypt, Qatar, and the United States are coordinating closely, with Cairo leveraging its channels to both sides despite setbacks and battlefield tensions. Egypt's stated priority remains a permanent ceasefire and Gaza's reconstruction, while rejecting any arrangements that restrict Palestinian movement or block relief operations. In a significant move, Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa visited Egypt for high-level talks. He traveled with Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdel Ati to the Egyptian side of the Rafah border crossing, where they toured logistical hubs and met officials managing aid. From in front of Rafah border crossing, the Egyptian Foreign Minister stressed that Gaza must be flooded with urgent assistance without Israeli obstacles, aligning Cairo's humanitarian push with its diplomatic mediation. Egypt and its partners continue circulating proposals, pressing for a deal that couples calm with measures to ease suffering in Gaza and restore stability.
We're trying to make a deal so that there's no destruction and death.
The U.S. Department of the Treasury announced that the administration of President Donald Trump has imposed additional Iran-related sanctions targeting 13 entities based in several countries, in addition to 8 ships. The punitive measures included Greek national Antonios Margaritis and his network of companies and vessels, which the United States Treasury said were involved in transporting Iranian oil in violation of sanctions. Iran's official news agency, the IRNA, reported that Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi will hold a joint phone call with Western powers to discuss nuclear talks and sanctions. The agency said that Araghchi will speak with his counterparts from France, the UK and Germany on Friday, that's today. The three European powers were threatened to trigger the snapback mechanisms for reimposing UN sanctions on Iran if it does not return to the negotiating table. The European countries had given Tehran until the end of August to resume negotiations and allow inspections or else face consequences through the Security Council.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Now, one person was killed in a new Israeli airstrike on southern Lebanon. Lebanon's Ministry of Health Emergency Operations Center reported that the individual was killed after being targeted by an Israeli drone in the town of Eita el-Shab in the Bin Jabal district of southern Lebanon. The American news website Axios revealed that the U.S. administration requested Israel to reduce non-urgent military operations in Lebanon to support the Lebanese government's decision to begin the disarmament of Hezbollah. Axios reported that Trump's administration asked Israel to consider withdrawing from one position and to significantly scale down airstrikes for a few weeks as a first step to demonstrate readiness to cooperate with the Lebanese government's efforts. Now, the Housing Bank announced that Bank de Lebanon has released 300 billion Lebanese pounds from the bank's account to fund housing renovation and loans. Bank de Lebanon stated that it approved the release of 300 billion Lebanese pounds from the Housing Bank's account, designated exclusively for the purpose of financing home renovation loans. Israeli army forces infiltrated villages and towns in the Quneitra and Dara provinces in southern Syria, setting up checkpoints, searching civilians, and arresting several individuals. According to the Syrian news agency Sana, an Israeli military patrol consisting of 6 vehicles entered the town of Abidin in the Yarmouk Basin area west of Dara from the direction of the Golan Heights early Friday morning. The patrol arrested 3 young men before later leaving the area and releasing the 3 detainees. The UN's top envoy to Syria has warned that the country's transition remains on the edge of a precipice and that violence could resume at any time in the southern city of Soweida. Geir Peterson told the UN Security Council that while violence in Soweida has largely subsided following a ceasefire, the risk of renewed conflict is ever present, as are the centrifugal political forces that threaten Syria's sovereignty, unity, and independence and territorial integrity. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has reported that Russia launched a massive overnight attack, including 574 drones and 40 missiles. He added that although Ukrainian forces intercepted a significant number, some strikes hit civilian areas. Zelensky highlighted one missile that destroyed an American-owned household appliance factory in Mukachevo, condemning the incident as deliberate assault on U.S. investment in Ukraine. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said that there are currently no plans for a meeting between Russian President Putin and his Ukrainian counterpart Zelensky. However, Lavrov added that Putin is prepared to meet with Zelensky once a summit agenda is finalized. Lavrov claimed Russia has shown flexibility on several points raised by Trump during talks in Alaska. Lavrov also said that Zelensky, when presented with principles for peace, had said no to everything. Both Russia and Ukraine have claimed battlefield victories, illustrating the complexity of the ongoing conflict. Russia's Ministry of Defense asserted its forces seized Alexandro Shultino in Donetsk, a strategically vital settlement. Conversely, Ukraine's armed forces reported recapturing most of Tovste in Donetsk and successfully striking Russian targets, including an oil refinery. Amid these developments, diplomatic efforts are underway, with Hungary offering to host peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. Russia's foreign minister also stated that the presence of foreign troops in Ukraine is unacceptable. Russian oil supplies to Hungary and Slovakia could be suspended for at least 5 days after a recent Ukrainian strike on a Russian factory. The two EU nations, which rely on Russian energy and oppose sanctions, have urged the European Commission to ensure supply security. This is the second such disruption this week, widening the fallout from the conflict. The Soviet-era Druzhba pipeline, which serves both countries, was impacted, though Germany's Kazakh oil imports remain unaffected. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has met with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Islamabad, affirming the unique all-weather friendship between the two nations. Sharif looks forward to attending the SCO summit in China and commemorating the 80th anniversary of the victory against fascism. He expressed Pakistan's desire to upgrade the China-Pakistan economic corridor to version 2.0, focusing on various sectors, while also prioritizing the safety of Chinese personnel in the country. Wang echoed the sentiment, welcoming Sharif to China and pledging to work with Pakistan to advance their shared goals. Life-size wooden puppets of giraffes, lions and several other animals completed a 20,000-kilometer journey from Congo to Norway in August, symbolizing the animals fleeing from the effects of climate change. In the last leg of their intercontinental odyssey, these puppets scaled the Jostedalsbreen Glacier, the largest glacier in mainland Europe, and concluded the trek at Nordkapp, one of the northernmost points in the world. Very impressive. Now that brings us to the end of our bulletin, and here's what we've been covering. Egypt reiterates its steadfast opposition to the ongoing Israeli obstruction of humanitarian aid. Israel announces approval for military plans to evacuate Gaza's population. And the Russian foreign minister says Putin is prepared to meet with Zelensky once a summit agenda is finalized. That's all for now. Follow us on our social media platforms. Our handle is @Qnews EGY. You can get news from us 24 hours a day. And coming up, we have In Depth shortly. Stay watching here on Q News.